Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John's report is for the 2nd of August. And of course, we were talking about this move here of Magenta and on the MBI readings and the fact that white had been dropping. And look at, we're back down to the zero ranges where we were popping up to new highs. Of course, you have to get a bounce back when you start to get to 2 negative. Let's see what the number was for this last dip. 293. 152. I mean, we're looking at sub 1 right now at 0.94, which is 0.88. If it stays in that range, that's pretty extreme. And of course, typically when that happens, you get some kind of return back up, which usually leads a little bit softness. Now, the question will be whether or not you then end up with declining red and magenta moving back underneath the 33. I mean, it sustained it for a very long period of time through much of at the beginning of July, and then by middle of July, we ended up with that really fast breakdown that filled in positive extremes, only to bounce right back. And that's part of where the current market is still within this general bullish track here. Yes, we have DSC cyan above. We also have green above, green below, but steel riding above cyan. So still short-term buyers basically lifting up everything. And now you got new fund money coming in. We may even see a float to push towards that. What usually happens between the 4th and the 6th range. Could pre-float that, just anticipating that they're going to have to buy it at a higher price, and then they'll sell into that strength a little bit. We'll see what the readings give us at that particular point. Of course, the NQ, a little bit softer in its readings, and that's why it's had a little bit more movement underneath, but still pretty much the same, just slightly below the S&P's numbers, and you get yellow below the 33, magenta still above it. So it's still riding with the bullish wave. And from a gold standpoint, getting back some of those gains as the battle rages on, what's going to happen with the, inflationary targets. If there's going to be additional lockdowns, that's not inflationary. In fact, it's just the opposite. That would send gold into a deep one. So whether that's narrative talk to kind of talk markets down or something, it's not going to do it for the stocks, because lockdown concept just means more stimulus and more business for big business. So that's hardly a negative in any way, shape, or form. From a euro standpoint, just holding along this renewed area just because of, again, this concept that the U.S. is going to potentially outpace Europe in the printing wars. And we'll see if they're successful at that. But if the U.S. Economy continues to slow, that definitely will bolster the euro, because it's discounting the fact that the European economies in general have been very weak coming out of these restricted times. From a Bitcoin standpoint, we ended up with a nice little buy setup coming up there right around 38. It shot it up to 42. Then we ended up with a white spike. Good indication that it's time to consider taking profit, especially when you have that dip of magenta right below the yellow setup right there, and faded down below. Now looking fairly strong here with magenta above. A little bit of softness with the dip in magenta, but as long as it's above yellow, it's still within that buy configuration, particularly with weight under red. All good. It's been easy to follow that. From a 5K standpoint, pretty straightforward. I have to talk to the code a little bit about this, because it's a unique setup where you had the move of the bullish magenta riding above, and when it dipped down and we ended up with a little bit of a spike of white from the really deep negative shakeout, it should have converted to the green on the PNT2 here, and I have to look at the conditions to find out why it didn't, because this met all the setups that we look for, moving into positive shakeout, did the dip of steel back to the 0 point. Yes, you still had cyan riding over, but you had rising red within that construct, even in the secondary setup of it, as well as we had dips of orange, even as much as right at this critical spot right here. dipping underneath for the ride. So I want to understand what happened with that one, because that definitely tightens up the code, because it was clean from the pre-market exit from before, coming down through, and then the early starts of buy configurations as Shakeout improved. And then we just sort of ended up with back and forth. Every time we ended up with white tick above, ended up with some softness. Secondary move came, and then it finally met the zero a little bit further over, and that satisfied both those. The fact that it spiked over here was happened with green DOC over cyan, negating its potential power on it. This one's a little bit tougher, where you have the white riding above, but you have straight up move with magenta and gold that's still bullish from that configuration. And then when it broke down, right where the cyan buy signal candle comes in, and you can see it's just a straight up from there. There was an update I had to do to the MBI indicator, so you'll probably get an email for that one. Look for it to start things out for the month. But as always, look for me on the Skype chat. I'll keep posting charts. Trade well.